Good evening, everyone. So first off, thank you very much. I'm really delighted to be here. As I think most of you know, this has been a very difficult year for our community, and we wanted to do something a little bit different at this year's ceremony to ensure that we really honour and recognise a few of the individuals who we've lost over this past year. In particular, I just want to take a moment to mention Sean Meehan, Ro Doyle, and Gemma Redman. These are just three members who played a very significant role in the various communities that they were part of, and we think it's really important to honour them. And we also think it's really important to honour those individuals whose names perhaps we don't know, but who we've also lost. So as we go through tonight's ceremony, I ask that you really try to remember these individuals, keep them in your hearts and in your minds. So thank you.
Each day I live, I want to be a day to give the best of me. I'm only one, but not alone. My finest day is yet unknown. I broke my heart, fought every pain to taste her sweet.
coming tonight, the 11th ceremony of remembrance here in the church. Tonight, I've thought about what I would speak about you all this year, and it was just events in my own life earlier this year that brought me to what I have to talk which is about tonight. And if I had a heading for what I want to talk to you about, it's called Guilty No More, the Cleansing of My Soul. Something happened this year that brought me to address you tonight. In fact, I thought a lot of things. I did not think I would be well enough to attend this year. I was a wandering soul, looking for a place to exist, as I'd lost all of my thoughts of believing in anything. My reasons for being here, and especially what I would say to you all, I thought about religion, spirituality, those gone and those alive and struggling. I thought about family, friends, and also about an apology I got from a leading member of an LGBT organisation this year, who apologised to me for not doing enough to understand gender identity. That's transgender and all that comes within it. As they ignored their existence while pursuing their own, this was actually said to me. My answer was, today is the first day of the rest of our lives. The past cannot be changed, and the future is not here yet. I myself asked, why did I start up an organisation all those years ago called TENI, when I myself never identified as such, but simply as female. But I had to understand why myself people would identify like that. And to put a funny side to it, people would say, well, what would you identify yourself, or how would you identify yourself? And I say, born female, became a woman by age, and a lady by choice. We still have a long way to go. What brought me to all of this tonight was not only the tragedies that Broden thought about, but I had the same similar tragedies in my own family. My niece and nephew, 2 children of my brother, died within 3 months of each other, both in their early 30s, one from sudden death syndrome and the other from suicide. So I thought a lot about what defined my life and how I was getting through life. And I studied one 5-letter word to discover it, and that word was called guilty. G-U-I-L-T. Why was that 5 letters? Sorry, that's Alzheimer's setting in. Excuse me, I know. And I discovered that it's a word that was just unique to the English language. It's not used in any Germanic or Neo-European language or culture. They have a better way to handle things. So, tonight, I say to you, life will not be given to you. You have to go out and grab it. You have to take it yourself. I quote James Joyce, Non Serviam. So, I'm going to finish now soon. So tonight, I take the right to use that word for the last time in my vocabulary as long as I live. I give my self the right to feel guilty no more. Let us enjoy this life of remembrance and celebration of our lives. Thank you.
Beats per minute, all beating in time. Oh, 80 beats per minute, all beating in sync. let's beat our drums together. Let's make the rhythm flow. Let's make the rhythm flow. Let's make the rhythm flow. 80 beats per minute, all beating in time. 80 beats per minute, the beating of life. 80 beats per minute, it's keeping us alive. In the beating of your heart, to the rhythm, rhythm in your soul, to the rhythm in your soul, the rhythm in your soul. Feel the beating of your heart, to the rhythm in your soul. 80 beats per minute. Oh, it's 80 beats per minute. 80 beats per minute. The rhythm of the song. Oh, 80 beats per minute. Oh, tune in and turn it on. Oh, let's all raise our voices and let's all sing along. Yes, let's all sing along. Let's all sing along. Oh, let's all raise our voices. Let's all sing along. It's 80 beats per minute. It's 80 beats per minute. 80 beats per minute. You can hear it everywhere. 80 beats per minute. You can breathe it in the air. It's the melody of life that's playing in your head. Yes, it's playing in your head. It's playing in your head. It's the melody of life playing in your head. The melody of life playing in your head.
This service is to remember and to honour people who have died because of transphobia. And it's important that we hold the service because transphobia and the violence it engenders is very real. In some ways, Irish society has become more accepting of differences. Last year it was wonderful when we held a referendum in favour of marriage equality. This change in the law would have been unimaginable 20 years ago, and we celebrate that success. However, sometimes when society takes a big step towards equality, there is a backlash. I think that's what's happening in America right now with the election of Donald Trump. The election of a coloured president was progressive, and there is now a backlash in the election of a conservative president and houses of representation. And unfortunately, we know from the numbers that since Brexit and the American election, there has been an increase in hate crimes of all sorts. And we can't just sit at home and wring our hands and say that's wrong. We have a responsibility to speak out against that violence. We must stand up against violence and say it is not okay. If we ignore it, then we become part of that violence. We must speak with voices of love that are louder than voices of hate. So this evening, we affirm as a group the dignity and the worth of every human being, without caveats or exceptions. And we do this because it is the right thing to do. We do it because we claim to follow the teachings of Jesus, who never condemned anyone. Jesus always sided with the outsider. He sat down and he drank and ate with sinners. He saw the person and he accepted every person as being a child of God. The Old Testament in the Bible is often ignored by Christian groups. And that is a pity, because particularly the book of Genesis tells a wonderful story if we listen to it. Now, Charles Darwin's theory of evolution sort of knocked Genesis and the story of Adam and Eve on the head. But they were never meant to be taken as books of science or cosmology. They're stories about the human condition. They're stories about life that are always true. And in the creation story, we are told that God made trees and plants and animals and grasses and creatures. And he didn't make one tree. He didn't make one sort of grass. He didn't make one species of bird. He made infinite varieties of everything he made. There are thousands of trees, thousands of birds, thousands of grasses. After each act of creation, we are told that God looked at it and saw it was good. With his love of variety, it's only natural that when God created humanity, he didn't just create two types of people, male, female, and heterosexuals. And God did not make mistakes in his creation. He looked at what he had created and saw that it was good. So we celebrate the diversity of creation in the natural world. And we celebrate the diversity among people. And when we think about it, our human lifespan is such a short space of time in this world. If we got to live to 100, wouldn't it be wonderful? But most of us won't. It's a very short time. When we die, we are not going to be judged by our achievements, our wealth, the job we held. We will be judged on how we loved one another and whether or not we were kind to one another. That's the only marker for us. leaving aside being judged when we die, it's even more important that if we don't believe in an afterlife, that while we're here, we are kind to one another. So in the face of all this political turmoil in the world, in a world that is often hostile, let us just accept one another as being different, everyone, things in common, but everyone slightly different, and say, you're fine, just as you are. No excuses needed. Amen.
Good evening again. I just wanted to start off actually by saying a really big thank you to Bridget and the Unitarian Church for having us year after year, and of course to Lynda and Sara who organise it every year and make it very easy for TENI to kind of show up on the night and say a few words, so thank you for that, because it's such a significant event in our calendar of events. Because it's one of the few moments where we reflect. Now, I'll be honest, it's one of the more difficult events that we need to do, because it's hard to kind of look back and look at the things that aren't positive and that aren't changing. So I don't love that part of it, but I think it's really important. And I also wanted to thank the Deputy Lord Mayor, because it's very important that we get support for these types of events. In Ireland, I suppose, we use the Trans Day of Remembrance to commemorate the lives of trans, intersex and gender diverse people who've been lost over the past year. And as I said earlier, it's been a very difficult year for us, as we've lost 3 members who we miss every single day. So tonight is very much a night of mourning, it's a night of reflection, but it's also a night of healing. It's also a reminder of how much work that still needs to be done to ensure that the world is safe, that our community is supported and minded, and that we're able to get the support that we need. And it's clear that the society we live in still makes it very, very difficult for us to be trans and for us to thrive, and this needs to change. On a global scale, the Trans Day of Remembrance is very much used to commemorate the people who have been murdered or who have lost their lives due to transphobia or anti-transgender violence. And this event first started in 1998 after the death of a trans woman named Rita Hester, who was murdered, and to this very day, her murderers have not been brought to justice. Since the last time I was in here and standing up here, since the last Trans Day of Remembrance, 295 people worldwide have been reported murdered because of their gender identity or gender expression. And these are statistics that we get from the Trans Murder Monitoring Project, which systematically collects reports of homicides of trans people. And since the project first began in 2008, 2,228 people in 66 countries have been reported murdered as a result of their gender identity or gender expression. And when I was preparing for today, I was looking through the names, and if you print out the names which are available online, and I mean I would encourage you to do that because I think it's important that we remember these are very real human people who are no longer with us. What you find is you're flipping through page after page after page, and it's incredibly upsetting and horrifying to think that that's the world that we live in. And I was struck just how long that list was and how each one of these individuals has lost their life due to fear, hatred, and ignorance and prejudice. And this needs to change. Because if we took a minute of silence for each and every one of those individuals, we would be here for 37 hours, which is shocking. And I should also say, though, that those figures are just the tip of the iceberg. Those are just the reports that we get back. There are almost definitely people out there who have also been murdered whose names are not on that list, and it's really important that we remember those individuals as well, because that's just the tip of the iceberg. And whenever I get up here, I always think, we talk about this from a global level, and and murder and what happens kind of outside of Ireland, and that's really important. But it can, I suppose, lead us to think that this type of thing doesn't happen here, that it happens in places like Brazil or Turkey or the US. And in terms of degree, that is absolutely true. But I think in terms of actual violence and discrimination and harassment, we know in Ireland that is still an issue, that happens on a regular basis, from smaller kind of everyday acts of violence or microaggressions to really horrific crimes against individuals. And TENI runs a program called STOD, which is Stop Transphobia and Discrimination, and we ask community members to tell us if they've experienced that. And since we started that in 2013, we've had over 100 incidences, which goes to show it's not just an issue outside of our island or anywhere else. And it's important that we remember that, that this is something that so many of us experience. I do think it's important to say that on a global level, certainly people who are targeted tend to be trans women of color and trans sex workers, and we can't forget that, but certainly violence against trans people is an epidemic, and we need to be talking about that. What we do at TENI is we talk a lot about positive visibility, we talk about social change, about how we improve the lives of trans people by very much changing the structures that hold us down, by advocating for legislative change and supporting each other. But I think today is very much a somber reminder that there is so much work to be done, and that as we commemorate the lives of those that have been lost and damaged by transphobia, that we must also use it as a day to gain strength as a community, coming together like we are here, and say that this violence must end. And to all of those individuals out there who aren't trans, who are our friends, our families, our allies, I call on you to stand with us and support us, because today's a night of commemoration, but we have 364 other days that we need to be fighting back against this. So I just wanted to say a big thank you to all of you, and I'm going to end my bit with a moment of silence. So I'm going to ask you all to just take 60 seconds to reflect on what I've said and what we're doing here tonight, and I will start it now. Thank you.
Now we're going to light some candles that are on the table, and this is to honour people who have lost their lives because of gender identity, because of hatred. And also, of course, you were allowed to remember people you want to remember with joy and happiness as well. As I reflect on my history, I am aware of some of the things, some of the events, some of the people that have made me as I am. I give thanks that my future is not set in stone. There is a new me possible. Change can happen, though the me is still me, the same yet different. May I have faith to change, to bring head, heart and hand in unison a little more often. May I have hope in the future me, the glorious possibilities of the rest of my life. May I fulfill the gift of my life. And may I have love, above all love, to give, to take, and to share with the bruised and hurting world. Amen.
Brother, 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 there's far too many of you dying. You know we've got to find a way to bring some understanding here today. Father, Father, there's no need to escalate. You know, war is not the answer, 'cause only love can conquer hate. You know we've got to find a way to bring back loving here today. Oh, picket lines and picket signs don't punish me with brutality. Just talk to us and you can see what's going on, what's going on, what's going on, what's going on. Ooh.
Good evening, everybody. I'd like to first of all thank you for all coming this evening. But also I'd like to echo Bridget and Broden and Lynda's welcome of our Deputy Lord Mayor, Councillor Rebecca Moynihan, who is here representing the Lord Mayor this evening. The Lord Mayor's office has very kindly supported our ceremony since 2006. I think Lynda mentioned this earlier. They have always been involved here. In fact, last year we also had the Lord Mayor herself here to attend our 10th ceremony. So they're always very welcome, and we've always been welcome to the Mansion House. I'd also like to thank the warm-hearted, wonderful person that is Minister Bridget Spain, who has since 2006 welcomed us here and gave us a home for this ceremony, and also welcomed the trans community and supported us steadfastly over the last 11 years. And we are forever grateful, Bridget. We'd like to say thank you. And just as a small token, we'd like to give you some chocolates. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Something sweet for you to remember as well.
While contemplating my address this evening to you, and I was looking for some inspiration, my girlfriend Rachel actually gave me a quote that I could use from Mahatma Gandhi. And as I was considered putting the words to paper, those lines actually resonated across what actually I was trying to say. And that is, be the change that you want to see in the world. For many of us, that may seem like a challenging concept. It may seem like something we should leave others to do. But yet, by our very existence, by our very first tentative conversations, and by being open about who we are, and by our very positive visibility, we are changing our world. We are changing their world. In the past 10 years, who would have ever dared to dream the giant leaps that our community has taken? And we have brought so many members of our families, our friends, our colleagues and our allies with us. And yet I hear you say, we have so much more to do. And so we have. But now we are not alone, we are together. In 2006, a very small number of people lifted their heads and lifted their hearts and decided it was time for the trans community to believe in themselves, to support each other and advocate for healthcare and legal rights, and more importantly, they were willing to be visible and lead the way. And for those early conversations, debates, disagreements, all the necessary things for the start of a fledgling organisation. From those humble beginnings, in 2006, TENI was born. Be the change that you want to see in the world. We have all been part of that change. Your positive visibility has empowered more young trans people to express their true gender, to look for support, and to know that it's there when they need it. Without that small number of people in 2006, that belief and expectation would not exist. And we will need to continue their work. There is still so much more to do, and while there is still so much legislative change that needs to happen, healthcare, education, and more importantly, social change remains the greater challenge. In 2010, I spoke here about a young mother and child, Catherine and Lily, in my address. and asked what sort of future can we promise them. Today that future can be bright. Presently over 192 families are part of TENI's family support group, Transparency. In 5 short years they have expanded to now 3 groups, providing support for families throughout Ireland in Dublin, Limerick and Carlow. Last weekend I and some of my older friends attended a dinner which was held as part of Transparency's family residential in Carlow. And in one short evening we were granted a glimpse of the Ireland to come. An Ireland where young people can be supported in their families for who they are, without fear, without prejudice, but with acceptance, and most of all with love. Today we have a hope of that future. So as we leave here tonight, remember we are all part of this community. We all have a part to play, no matter how we express our identity. Whether we are family, friends, colleagues or allies, we must lift our hearts and remember those who were brave enough in 2006 to start this journey and to create TENI. So be the change that you want to see in the world. Thank you.
I just want to start off by saying that I've been here for several years, been honoured, thank you very much for always asking me, and how much I respect all of you. I almost want to cry because you all have such wonderful hearts, everyone I've met. I was a friend of Sean's for many years as well, very sadly missed. And so I chose this song specifically because he likes this song. And I also want to say, because of the years I've been here, I'm studying psychotherapy and counselling, and one of my niches, as I should say, is going to be for you, transgender especially. Hit it, baby. Thank you, Kasey. Kasey's my sound engineer this evening. Yeah, you're going to get up and do this with me in a while. Yeah. So yeah, sing along with me. I know you're going to know this. Stars shining bright above you. Night breezes seem to whisper, I love you. Birds singing in the sycamore tree. Let me hear you. Dream a little dream of me. Say nighty night and kiss me. Just hold me tight and tell me you'll miss me while I'm alone and blue as can be. Dream a little dream of me. Oh, stars fading, I linger on till
this announcement. There's a group starting in January 2017 of LGBT Christians, and they call themselves Faith and Pride, and they can be found on Faith and Pride website, and they're going to meet about once a week, probably on Friday evenings. So if that's of any interest to anyone, please, I'll leave this on the table if you want to check out the name. We're going to have some words from our Deputy Lord Mayor.
I actually wasn't going to speak, but I just decided at the end to come in because I found the ceremony and the remembrance so moving. One of the best things about a job like this is you get to see different parts of the city and different pockets of the city and different communities in the city. And to be able to be here tonight and listen to the stories of pioneers such as Lynda, and also remember members of the trans community who we've lost this year. Two very close friends of mine were very close friends of Sean, and I remember at the time the devastation with them for the couple of days in between. So I just wanted to say that I'm very honoured to be able to come here this evening, and when you see the pockets and the solidarity and the kindness and the heart of this community, this very small community, but also this very, very strong community. What TENI have done and what the kind of trans community have done over the last 10 years in terms of bringing both trans and intersex and gender fluid identity to the fore has really been an extraordinary conversation, and each and every single person in this room, but particularly people who identify as trans, are the most incredibly brave to be able to come out and say and live the life that you want to live, despite society's winds and coldness and not wanting to listen to that conversation, and continue and force and to fight and to have that conversation when people didn't want to listen is incredibly brave, it's incredibly strong, and you're a credit to your family, you're a credit to the community, but most importantly, you're a credit to each other. So thank you very, very much for having me, and I've just found tonight absolutely fantastic. Thank you.
If you have dreamed dreams, help one another that they may come true. If you have known love, give some back to a bruised and hurting world.